Okay, so the title of my talk is basically making animation make sense, which is basically about some simple stuff about animation and why and how you should look at animation when you're designing user interfaces. So hi, I'm Mariusz. This on Twitter. I'm a designer or developer, but mostly a designer now because front end is just getting too big for me. And I'm a co-founder of this thing. It's basically a startup that lets you try a job for a day, so it's pretty cool. It's like bring your kids to work day for adults. And because, well, maybe why I'm here because I'm running this thing in Gibbon. It's a shameless plug. It's a course on designing UI animation. And let's say why, basically. So animations are important, right? Because, everyone, just switching states from one to another without any transition is terrible. And we already know that. And a lot of new cool tools are there now to design animations. Animations are awesome. Like, basically really awesome to do. Not sure if anyone here did UI animation before? Cool. A lot of people. So you know it's awesome and it's fun. And they're delightful for the users, right? And also, they're pretty hard to get right. So why should you care? Because animations are everywhere. Animations can be transitions, animations can be explainers, and animations can be storytelling. And that's actually a pretty important part that a lot of people forget. Animations are branding. Right now there's a concept of this branded animation. So before you get into animation, let me start with the really classic quote from "With great power comes great responsibility." It's Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. And so let's talk about good interaction design. Good interaction design should engage the user, illustrate state, provide visual feedback, visual relationships between things, guide the user through the interface, reassure user that they're doing the right thing, or give people errors if they don't, and have affordances. So basically, a concept of affordance is pretty basic. Is people should directly understand how it works and why a button is a button and things like that, right? So what's a good animation? This comes from 12 principles of animation from the old men at Disney. And how can we use them in... also, I'm going to talk about how we can use them in interfaces. So first principle is anticipation. It basically means that you have this small pre-animation before animation starts, right? So... how do I play this thing now? There you go. So all those GIFs come from this Tumblr, which is called The Illusion of Life, and it basically covers 12 principles of animation. So how can you use this in user interfaces? iPhones. Like, I'm not sure if you noticed that this animation slide to unlock, it kind of lights up before it goes all the way, and it suggests what you should do without like direct tooltip or whatever telling you what to do. Another principle is squash and stretch. This is actually pretty cool if it plays. Right? So stuff shouldn't be static when it bounces. It should be bouncy when it bounces. And you would expect it to be. So let's look at interfaces that do that. Come on, play. So yeah, the 45-degree angle is obviously a Dribbble requirement. So follow through. Follow through is another principle, which means that if something animates, there's some extra animation that lags behind or it starts earlier. Example, this is going to be a lot of animated GIFs, basically, which is kind of like internet, and and a lot of examples, and then just basic overview of the tools that you can use if you're doing this. So follow through. You see, when it moves, it kind of bounces and it moves. There's another animation going on after it stops, things like that. So anyone here used Cal, the app for calendars? It's from the guys from AnyDo. They have amazing follow-through animation there, which is when you're switching between days in the agenda view, you have this thing, right? You switch the day and they kind of go one by one, not all together. Okay, staging. Staging is basically preparing the stage for the important thing. It's really cool when you want to focus on an element or things like that. So staging in classic animation would be that, and staging in the UI animation would be, right, this is a sign-up form. Obviously, you want to log in. Well, what happened? Why didn't it play? Oh, weird. Give me 1 sec. GIFs not playing is not fun when you have GIFs in your presentation. Okay, will this play? No. Okay. This worked when I tested it. Just saying. Anyway. So basically how it works, I'm just going to tell you how it works. Basically, this disappears, prepares the stage for the login form that comes in from the bottom. And because it also goes, this is also why this animation makes sense, is because everything goes to the bottom, and the form comes up from the bottom. You have the obvious interaction where you follow the disappearing object with your eyes, and it comes up from the same place, so you don't lose focus on it. And this was pretty much a similar thing. Post-to-pose animation. Post-to-pose animation is an animation principle that basically, if you have multiple poses, you shouldn't just transform them one-to-one. You should just make sure that all the keyframes in the middle also make sense, right? So if you switch from, let's say, a cube to a sphere to a cube again, it shouldn't just be linear. It should be something like, yeah. And there's also a straight ahead, which is kind of similar. So let's say you have a UI. Hopefully this is going to play as well. Yeah, it should. So you have this button on top here, and standard developer way of thinking about it would be to just click it, and then something comes up from the top, and yeah, it's kind of boring. So this is more fun, right? And also you don't lose focus on this. Plus turns into an X, and you never lose focus on it. So this also tells you that you can click there to go back. Exaggeration, which is typically cartoonish principle, which is basically making things bigger and more unreal than you would expect. So when you have a square, well, cube. Right? So you can use exaggeration in things like, yeah, I'm just going to leave this playing because it's so awesome. Anyway, so when you have exaggeration, what you want to probably think about is stuff like, I don't know, users achieving something or getting a reward or things like that. I actually worked with a company in LA once, and we used this a lot with achievements because they had the entire gamified experience, and it was totally over the top, and the people love it because they felt like they're playing a video game, which is awesome. So there's this app called Elevate. I'm not sure if you ever used that. It's basically for training your brain to speak better, write better, calculate better, things like that. It gives you a lot of achievements and points and stuff. So when you achieve actually the top score there from, let's say you have points every day, you get points every day. So if you achieve a high score, this animation is totally over the top because it goes slow and then goes boom, right? And personality, which is, I said that animation is branding, right? So when you have branded animation, it's really easy to even not have a lot of branding in your app, and people will still say that it's your app because the transitions work a certain way, and there are certain animation. For this, you usually need a pretty experienced animators because most of us, well, yeah, if you spend some time with After Effects, you can probably make awesome stuff, but it usually takes a lot of time. So personality is basically when you have a cube and it goes like all the way around, and then it goes all the way around faster, and it's fun, and it's awesome. So TweetDeck, I think it's called. I'm not sure. I always mix them up because there's Tweety and TweetDeck. I'm not sure which one it is. No, Tweety, I think. Well, whatever. Or Twitterific, right? Yeah. Too many Twitter clients. It's like weather apps. You never know which one it is. Have you used it? You know how the pull to refresh animation there looks like? Yes. And also hatching bird, actually. Because when you do this, there's an egg that hatches and it flaps. So, so it's like it's pretty cute, and it gives them a lot of... Okay. The nopes of animation. That's actually the bird. The next is going to be also the bird for some people. Do not annoy. I mean, a lot of animation is just purely annoying. And do not distract. So if your animation is distracting people from achieving their goal, it's not a good animation. I almost worked with a client where they had the design team, where the design team was basically, the animator was the CEO, right? So he never actually had a background or animation. He just browsed Dribbble and said, what's cool? And all of it was just over the top everywhere. And so yeah, don't do that, please. Do not log. So if your animation takes forever and people can't actually achieve their goals, it's really bad. And the state of tools. So how can you prototype animations? There's a lot of tools right now, and actually the easiest one so far for prototyping is Keynote. Yeah, seriously. It has a lot of really good animation tools, and you can really prototype a lot of stuff for mobile apps. And then you can, because you have iOS Keynote right now, you can also play it as a presentation, and people can play around with it. After Effects. Yeah, I'm just going to... I mean... You can, yeah. Yeah, you can. It's kind of killing a fly with a cannon, but you can. Edge Animate, which kind of works. Not sure. Adobe has this thing with animation where I think Flash actually gets it right only, which is kind of weird. But Framer Studio, this is really cool. Especially for the more developer part, because you can actually write CoffeeScript or JavaScript and prototype animations in there. There's also just libraries standalone, because the studio costs like $80, I think. And Framer.js is just a library that you can use, and it's pretty cool. Except the studio gives you all the fun things like previews. But if you're a developer, you can probably do it yourself as well. Quartz Composer and Origami. So those are the tools that, well, Origami was kind of made for UI design for Quartz Composer, but Quartz Composer was never actually made for UI design, and for some reason Facebook uses it for UI design, and suddenly everyone loves it. It's actually pretty cool if you ever worked with MIDI, for example, because it kind of works similar. You basically connect modules with each other, and you have cables and stuff like that. Have you ever used any of you Quartz Composer for UI? Yeah. So it's pretty good. With Origami, it's actually pretty good. Without Origami, yeah, the learning curve is kind of too much for this thing. HTML, so yeah, you have keyframes, you have transitions, stuff like that. And if I ever see transition anywhere that goes linear instead of ease, for example, I just do pull requests for that now. If I find it with open source project, I just change their transitions to there's this Bezier curve now you can play around with, and you can really make really nice easings, and people keep insisting on using linear. I think browsers already force you to do ease instead of linear these days, and this is pretty good. But here's a call to action for you guys. First, I heard this on the conference where I also saw a talk about animations. And first company to come up with animation equivalent of Sketch will earn a lot of money. So if you know developers that want to play around with animation and make it as easy as, and also as focused on UI design as Sketch is, you're going to make a lot of money probably. So where to learn from? Classic Animation, the 12 Principles, Tumblr.com. It's the thing that I used for the GIFs. Other designers, you can do this, and there's a lot, really. You have to have a filter. I mean, you have to make sure that, because people on Dribbble have this thing where except the 45 degrees part, they have this thing where if it looks really awesome, but it's totally useless, they will still have it on top because it has a lot of views and a lot of likes. So yeah, just go through the first couple of pages and then the good stuff starts usually. Video games. That's actually the best resource because those guys are really good at animation for obvious reasons. And also you can play video games and say it's research. That's just a pro tip. So, and I don't know if you read this. It's Material Design by Google. They have a lot of really good animation principles and a lot of really good examples. So, have fun and thanks. Here's the course and my Twitter and all those things.